For whatever reason, a lot of the other reviews seem to miss the core value prop of the card that actually makes it overpowered. Over the past week, I've had a few people ask me to react to some other videos with questionable information. Personally, I don't really like when people use a face for clout, so I'm not going to do that, but I feel almost a fiduciary duty to correct information that's wrong, especially for a space that I've spent my entire YouTube journey on and something that I'm actually passionate about. One of the biggest misconceptions I've seen is that the Capital One Venture X is a great endgame setup, so once you've exhausted all your other options, then you go to Capital One. Today we'll talk about why that's not true, and how that advice might cost you a few hundred, if not thousands of dollars. We'll also talk about why the Venture X is pretty good and might have benefits that you might not know about, and number 3 is how it fits into the entire picture. Big favor before we dive in is to give this a thumbs up to help with the algorithm, that way other people can actually see this and don't get screwed. Also, if you are new here and you want to get value from the spend that you already do, then consider subscribing. A lot of this starts with Capital One's business model. Their primary focus is subprime and collecting interest. If you are someone that watched a recent Apple Card video, it was one of the comparison points. You might not have known this, but Capital One is the largest subprime player among the big banks. In fact, 30% of its loans were to customers with FICO scores below 660, so near prime and subprime. Their ideal customer is someone that keeps a balance, pays interest, but that does not default. The idea being that if you default, if you don't pay them, then obviously they lose everything. On the flip side, what they might not necessarily want is someone that's super credit card savvy. So someone who's managing a lot of cards and is probably getting value from those cards. If you are someone that falls into that bucket, then there are some other bigger issuers that don't mind having you. A lot of those bigger issuers focus on interchange fees and cross-selling. Interchange fees is what they charge to merchants for accepting credit cards. If you go to a store to buy something, you end up getting rewards when you swipe, but the merchant ends up paying a fee. Cross-selling is when you push other financial products, such as mortgages, investment accounts, and auto loans. Herein lies the problem. If you spend time researching the space, Capital One is one of the most annoying issuers to get approved for. A lot of people have issues getting approved if they have too much recent velocity, and even if they just have too many accounts. Basically, if Capital One sees you as someone non-profitable, then they're not going to approve you. For a lot of other issuers that focus on interchange fees and cross-selling, that might not be the case. You might look non-profitable, but you look profitable for other things. In fact, I would say that there's a lot of data points backing this. I just got denied for the Capital One Venture X. I'm guessing it's because I opened too many accounts in the last few years. Credit score is 820, income is 190K. Total cards opened, 8. Just got turned down for the Venture X last week. Guessing from the last rejection in November of 2022, too many lines of open revolving credit. Capital One is pretty sensitive to inquiries, and one of the hardest cards to get approved for is the Venture X. Long story short, but you want to prioritize Capital One pretty early in your process. They seemingly don't care about your income or your credit score, it's more so about your profitability. Depending on your end goal, I think most people would consider this either the early game or the start of the mid game. Definitely not the end game though. Okay, but why should I care about this Venture X card anyways? Low effective annual fee, a superpower that you might not be aware of, and also pretty decent multipliers. It's a pretty solid card and can be the foundation of a long-term setup depending on how you want to play things. Given how hard it is to add in the late game, getting it now means that you have a lot more optionality and you have the ability to keep it. It's also a lot more affordable than you realize. So there is a $395 annual fee that scares a lot of people, but you have a lot of things helping you. I'd say that as long as you do at least one trip a year, you're pretty good. So the first thing is going to be a $300 annual travel credit. This is going to be for bookings through Capital One Travel, and it's like cash to most people. Obviously, if you want to be pedantic, you can't argue this, but in my book, it's $395 annual fee minus $300 means that you have a $95 effective annual fee just from this credit. On top of this, you're going to get 10,000 bonus miles for every card member anniversary. So for example, if you get the card right now in February, in 12 months, next February, you're going to get 10,000 miles in every subsequent February. If you redeem towards travel, you get at least 1 cent per point, so 10,000 miles is $100 in value. You can get a lot more value by transferring the points out to partners, where you might get 2 to 3 cents per point. Still though, at 1 cent per point, it makes a lot of sense for the card. So the $95 effective annual fee that we previously had, minus the $100 here for the minimum value, that means that they're paying you $5. $5 to keep the card. In the first year, you also get an intro bonus that helps a ton given how intro bonuses work. I'll actually pin a comment with the current offer down below, or I'll put it into the description box. Know that as long as you can hit the intro bonus, you're generally getting something like 10 to 18.75% return on spend on the low end. This, along with the superpower, makes it a pretty easy pickup in my book. On that note, if you do want to learn about cards, whether this one or pretty much any card out there, and you want to support the channel, we do have links on the website, AskSebby.com, and down below in the description box. Make sure that the links are competitive, that it makes sense for you, but otherwise, it is a huge way to support the channel, so thank you guys in advance. Okay, so what's the superpower of the card that makes it S tier? In Japan and in video games, S tier is used for the top of the top. For our purpose, it's a card that breaks the game. I'm not saying, I'm super saying. One of the best perks of the card is that you get complimentary access to a bunch of lounges for you and 2 guests. As of right now, this includes Capital One lounges, which are pretty good. We did a video on this, but I definitely think it's up there. A big weakness with the Capital One lounges is that they have a relatively smaller network. On top of this, you also get Priority Pass that gets you and 2 guests access to these lounges. Reminder that this is only for lounges and not restaurants, so depending on the airports that you're based out of, that might be a miss. So for example, if you're out of Portland, you'd probably want the Chase Sapphire Reserve because that includes restaurants. Portland's kind of weird in that a lot of their offerings are more restaurants rather than normal lounges. Back to the Venture X, you also get access to Plaza Premium lounges for you and 2 guests. They have 100 lounges worldwide, and including select Virgin Atlantic clubhouses. In Asia in particular, I feel like Plaza Premium lounges are pretty solid. There are better options out there for first and business, but in terms of economy stuff, it's up there. In the early game, I think the Venture X has one of the strongest lounge charts out there. Ironically, that's not even the superpower. The Venture X is one of the most generous cards when it comes to authorized users, both in terms of the fee and also the benefits you get. So right off the bat, you can add up to 4 authorized users with no additional cost. A lot of other issuers might charge you $75 per authorized user, or let's say $175 to add up to 3. A lot of the other perks, such as lounge access, actually pass over to authorized users. For whatever reason, a lot of the other reviews seem to ignore or not be aware of this fact, and it feels like the core value prop of the card that makes it overpowered. The first one is going to be airport lounge access to Capital One Plaza Premium, and they also get their own Priority Pass card. Everything you get from lounges as a primary user, they get as an authorized user. This means that they don't actually need to travel with you to get these perks. So it means that when they go, they can actually bring 2 of their own guests. I'd say that this is perfect if you have kids in college who want travel perks, and maybe they're coming home to visit, but they can't justify their own travel cards yet. Also great for couples, or if you have parents that maybe don't travel as much as you do, but still like to have lounge access. For example, Mandy has family in Dallas. They travel, but they just don't want to get a travel card. Assuming that you trust the other person, then you're providing value and it's not really costing you anything. In fact, with 4 free authorized users, you could, let's say, add a kid, you could add a sibling or something, a sister, and also both parents. Number 2 is going to be Hertz status. With this card, you get Hertz President Circle status, which is their top level status. This allows you to skip the rental counter and enjoy the widest selection of cars with a complimentary upgrade. In order to get this normally, you'd either need to spend $3,000 per year renting cars or do 15 rentals. Number 3 is going to be all the other Visa Infinite perks since this is a Visa Infinite card. So that might be purchase protection, extended warranty, return protection, trip cancellation interruption, lost luggage reimbursement, trip delay, or even cell phone protection and primary CDW. Note that certain credits and the ones that you're hoping for are not shared. This includes the $300 travel credit, 10,000 mile anniversary bonus, and also $100 global entry or TSA pre-check credit. These 3 things are not shared.
Mandy here. You also get access to Capital One's entertainment pre-sales. So that's how some people got access to Taylor Swift tickets. Or if you're more into sports, they had pre-sale for the World Series.
That's why I'm being forced to go to Taylor Swift.
Seb is so excited for March.
Main takeaway number 1 is that this is a highly subsidized card. Number 2, you get some pretty awesome lounge benefits for a low, if not no, effective annual fee card. Number 3, you have the crazy ability to add up to 4 authorized users who get the same lounge benefits and also Hertz status and Visa Infinite perks. For a lot of families that don't want too advanced or complicated of a setup, this might be a one and done card. Well, what about the multipliers? Why haven't you covered it? The big reason is because I think for a lot of people, it's secondary. You do get 10x miles back on hotels and car rentals booked through Capital One Travel. You also get 5x miles on flights booked through Capital One Travel as well. The other big multiplier for the card is that you get 2x miles back on all of your other purchases. This one is pretty interesting because it's uncapped. The only real contender on the personal side is the City Double Cash, which gets you 2x thank you points back. And this is effectively because you get 1x back when you spend and 1x back when you pay, and technically the marketing is cash back, but on the back end it's thank you points. Main advantage of the Venture X is that you probably have higher credit limits. Other issuers either have caps on this, require you to get business cards, or only earn 1.5x back. This brings us to one of the most underrated systems, the Capital One 1-2 Punch. One of the best pairings for the Venture X is the Savor card. It does come with a $95 annual fee, but if you are spending enough, it's going to be well worth it. Savor earns 4% back on dining, 4% back on entertainment, 4% back on popular streaming, 3% back on grocery stores, and 1% everywhere else. What you might not know is that the cash back that you get here is technically miles. Since back in 2021, you can convert Capital One cash back into miles. This means that 4% is technically 4x. Capital One is one of the more intriguing early and mid-game setups because it has categories that other issuers just don't focus on. A huge example of this is entertainment that other issuers seem to forget about. I feel like a lot of people I know in their late 20s and early 30s spend a lot going out, so that's going to be pretty useful. One of the biggest benefits of this entire setup is that you have a lot of optionality and you have something called exit options. Downgrade paths, exit options, off-ramps, whatever you want to call it. It's a system where you can get off of this if it's not a fit without you hurting long-term. While some of the other endgame issuers, you don't really have that option. It's either cancel or you keep paying that fee. With those issuers, you might be able to downgrade, but you're still paying a fee. If you're not a fan of the Venture X after the first year, you can downgrade it to the Venture 1. For the Savor, ironically, you cannot downgrade to the Savor 1, but you can downgrade to the Quicksilver. No clue why that's the case, and maybe that changes in the future. Outside of avoiding annual fees, it also brings in this whole idea of optionality. I'm looking for props on my desk, so this might be weird. So the best example of Capital One is a bar of soap. So the idea is that you can claim it and then you can kind of come back to it if you want to. A lot of other issuers are more like bottles of soap, so you can kind of come back to them whenever you want. Other people can use them and it's not a problem. I probably made things a lot worse, but hopefully that makes sense. If you start with Capital One, if you don't like it, you can downgrade to there are no annual fee cards, and then you can try dating around, do other things. And if those people are not a fit, you can always upgrade your Capital One card back to the Venture X. If you started the other issuers first, you might not be able to get the Venture X. A lot of people who know the credit card space know that if you wait until the end game, it might not be an option. End of the day, I don't want you to miss out on a few hundred, if not a few thousand of dollars of value, especially if you are someone that can leverage that superpower. Again, if you want to learn about cards, we have links on AskSebby.com and down below in the description box. If you made it to this point in the video, then leave a soap emoji in the comments down below, and I'll try to heart it and also respond. My question for you is, what are your thoughts on the Venture X? Also, if you have the card, what are your thoughts? Let me know and everyone else know in the comments down below. Big favor, give this a thumbs up, consider subscribing, share it with a friend, but otherwise, hope you liked it. See you next time.